Parasyte is good. It's really good. Like, really good. It's almost a 10 out of 10 in my book. That's how good I think it is subjectively. Everything from the story structure, to the pacing, to the atmosphere, to the inspiration the story takes, to this, story itself. It's Spider-Man meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's awesome! And you feel all of this. You feel it all. You take it all in if you're reading the manga. Yeah, the anime takes modernizing to the weirdest degrees. It takes everything from the structure to the pacing to the everything else I just mentioned earlier to a more modernized approach, which you think would make more sense, but actually, not really. We're at a time in anime history where remaking the old and only changing a tad is almost the norm. We're having remakes of older shows that are almost shot-for-shot adaptations of older manga that never had any adaptations, or at least none fully. Some of them even seem to be doing the Watchmen approach by using the comic as a storyboard, and some of them are using the original art style instead of modernizing it. All of this is a growing fad that Parasyte oddly didn't do, which you might say is a good thing because it's more of the director's story this way, right? But if you do it the other way, it's interesting for both audiences. For fans of the source material, it's amusing and even fan service to see all those same shots and moments on the big screen. And for people who haven't read the source material, it's interesting to see something new and different. Parasyte doesn't feel new or different. If it wasn't for the fact that I read the manga, I would not have known this was an old story. If they were trying to cover that up, why? By now, old is different. That's why all these adaptations and remakes are popular. Nowadays, we want the old, and even in other media this is a fad. Parasyte is such an oddball. It doesn't have that feel that makes it unique, other than the fact that it's not unique. But it's still Parasyte. It's still a good story. It's an example of bad directing, but good storytelling. Even if it's not great at the telling part. I know it sounds like I've been bashing the anime, but I kinda like it. I prefer the manga, but the anime isn't bad either. It's just what I expected instead of what I wanted. If you haven't seen the anime yet, I recommend to read the manga first. I mean, it's only 10 volumes. Read it! Now! Before making this video, I skimmed through the manga a little bit, rewatched the anime and dubbed this time, and viewed some movies like... which would be the story the manga was most inspired by. Well, kinda. Some of those big sci-fi fans out there might be correcting me with the title because the invasion of part is exclusive to the movie. The original book was just titled The Body Snatchers. But even there that wouldn't be completely true because before Body Snatchers there was the book with a very similar theme titled The Father Thing, a short story by Philip K. Dick. But then before that, there was the story It Came from Outer Space by Ray Bradbury, based off of his story called The Meteor. And then before that, there was a book called The Puppet Master. Then before that, a story by H.P. Lovecraft and August Derth. And then finally, in 1884, a short story called The Body Snatcher by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson. There's probably much more out there, but the point is, the story of alien pod people coming to Earth and slowly taking over mankind by infecting one man at a time isn't completely original. But whether or not this was the cause of multiple discovery or just plain stealing doesn't really matter at this point because by now the story has been remade, rebooted, retold, re-altered, and parodied in almost everything. And it's not that surprising on why. Stories about aliens seem to be on the down low right now, and maybe for a while. It's a story that can almost never be outdated. Back then it was a not so blatant reference to communism taking over, now it's, well, exactly what it is. Aliens taking over. Speaking of not so blatant, another speck of inspiration that the story takes is one that I can't tell is purposeful or coincidental. Spider-Man. It's not new for Japanese mangakas and animators to take inspiration from Western media, especially back then, but most of the time they admitted taking inspiration, or it was just very obvious. In here, it's almost middle. He never admitted to taking inspiration, at least not from what I found, and it's not that obvious to the point where you could miss it. But for those who did, here's something I always wanted to do, and hopefully can do. Spoilers alert, so click here if you want to skip them. A nerdy, antisocial high school kid with glasses gets infected by a bug of some kind, presumably from space, and gains superhuman abilities. He has parents, who one of which dies by his technical fault, two love interests, one of which dies by his technical fault. He also eventually changes, becoming darker and less sincere, and loses the glasses. All of this his girlfriend hates and wishes he would go back to normal. He eventually does because of a chain of events, and his girlfriend almost dies by falling off a building. There's maybe more exclusive stuff in the comics, but I don't feel like reading them all. Although I might get around to that 90s cartoon sometime. The point is that Parasyte takes all these story elements and puts them together to make something that feels and, well, hell, is new. Remember that list of Body Snatcher movies I mentioned? Well, Parasyte would be the remix story. Taking different ideas and combining them is almost how everything is made, and Parasyte is a good example of that in story form. It's no blockbuster hit or critical hit, but it's a middle between those two. Critics like it and fans like it, and those type of stories are rare to come by these days.
Everybody's been acting really strange, especially the faculty.
Tell me about it. It's like they've all turned fucking pod people or something.
To what people?
It's an invasion of the body snatchers. Small town gets taken over by aliens. That was a joke.
Look, what if it really happened?
What if what really happened?
I think something's taking over our school.
The Body Snatchers is a story somebody made up, dingus. It's located in the fiction section of the line.
Yeah, so is Schindler's List. Look, all fiction is based on some truth, right? What does Miss Berg teach us in English 101? Write what you know. How do we know this writer guy
Jack Finnick
didn't encounter aliens in his high school, which led him to write a book about an alien invasion?
Your conspiracy theory is flawed.
How so?
Well, Jack Finney's The Body Snatchers is a blatant rip-off of The Puppet Masters by Robert Heinlein, so you can completely disregard that entire work.
Whatever. The point is, they're here, they've been here, and they're here again.
You know, Casey, I think you've interacted with the flagpole one too many times.